So our next speaker is Ava Amsen, the Outreach Director of Faculty Without.
Thank you. So, because I only got a few minutes, let me find my slides. I'm not able to tell you about all the things we're doing at F1000 right now. I've really just limited it to the topic of the meeting beyond open access. So, Faculty of 1000, I don't know how familiar you are with the different things we've been doing over the years. It was launched in 2002 as a recommendation service for articles. We've recommended many of the articles you've published, but recently we've also started our open science publishing platform called F1000 Research. And we call it open science because it's not just open access, we also have open peer review and open data. The front page looks like this, so on the right there is you can't read it, it's a column of the different topics we cover, and it's roughly anything in biology and medicine, but it's quite broad, so it includes education and computational biology and psychiatry, so it's really pushing the boundaries of what's life sciences. And we work with 4 core principles. And these principles, you can also find them on our website, and they each have a little video where researchers are talking about this specific topic. So I'm just going to go through these 4 things, but I'm actually going to do it backwards because you've already heard a lot about data sharing, and I'll explain what we mean by no editorial bias, and you realize we say that as well. And I'll end with our peer review model, which is really the thing that is the most different between us and other publishers. So I'll start with data included. As Ian already mentioned, F1000 Research is one of the publishers who require that all data is included for an article to be submitted. These data must be hosted in stable and recognized open repositories and be made available under a CC0 license. We also include software where it applies. The software is then hosted on GitHub, and we use the Nodo to give it a DOI so that you can, if you want to, just cite the software itself. And one thing that I did want to briefly show you is where possible, we can actually make the data interactive. Because we don't have any print issues, everything is based online, we can actually do that. For some articles, we're working specifically with researchers to make their data interactive, but for certain types of spreadsheet data, we've standardized it, and we call it a data plotter internally. It's not a very creative name, but you'll see what it does. So here's an article that includes a data plotter. So if you scroll down, you see some of the data and tables and figures. And there's also this colorful graph. This is the data plotter. These data were submitted to us just as a simple spreadsheet, which you can find below. And these are just screenshots of me going through the animation, but if you were to actually on the website, you can interact with this. If you mouse over any of the data points, the specific information pops up. If you want to put a different value on the x-axis, you can select that below and you can plot it differently. If you want to just look at one data set instead of all 5 at a time, you can also do that. So there's a lot of things that you as a reader or as a reviewer of the article can do to really dig into that massive set of data that is included with everything. So open data is one thing we do. No editorial bias was another of our pillars, and by that we mean simply editors do not select articles by interestingness. So we ask our referees to look just at sound science, and we do publish negative results, and we publish lots of different types of articles that allow for the publication of all research roughly. So you can think of, you've already heard that we have data notes, we have negative results. We also do case reports, opinion articles, observation articles, which is really useful for ecologists in particular, but can also apply to people who work with microscope research. And let's see if I get this to work. I don't know how far back you can still read this, but articles that are presenting negative results get a little label, a ribbon that says negative or null results, and you can actually search in our article page for articles that are just the negative results ones. People have been asking for that, so we made it searchable. And now the refereeing process with us, everything is open, and I know that a lot of journals are now doing open review, but still you see different levels of openness. Sometimes you have just the referee names made public, or sometimes the reviewer names are shown only to the authors and not to everyone With F1000 Research, everything is open, so all reviewer names and all referee reports, and it's not optional. If you don't want to share your name as a reviewer, we'll find another reviewer. That's how strict it is. A review report looks like this. You can't read anything, but I'll just point to the different parts. The name of the reviewer is listed, as well as a very short summary of the status of the review. In this case, it's approved. The first 3 lines of the report, and then you can expand it to read the full thing. In this case, there was an author response below, so that's also public, and everything is visible. The views on the report, just the views of this specific report are also on there. And if there is something in a particular referee report that's not anywhere else in the article, and you want to cite that, that's also possible. Each report has its own DOI and its own, if you click the citation box, this pops up, and you can just, you'll be given the information on how to cite just the report. So everything is completely transparent. But it's not just transparent. These reports also go up as they come in. The articles are published before the peer review happens, and this is really where we're very different compared to most other publishers. So when an article or when a manuscript is submitted to us, our editors look at it and basically decide whether it's ready to send to peer review. So they do all the regular checks. They do the plagiarism check, they check that the authors are real authors at a real institute, all the basics, they make sure that it's complete, that all the data is there, and once they've decided that this is ready to be sent out to peer reviewers, the article is formatted, published online with all the data, and that happens within a week. If it takes longer, it's usually because the authors haven't sent in their data yet, and there's a bit of back and forth. And then the peer review process starts after that. So it doesn't matter how long that takes, how long the reviewers take, how long the authors take to send in revisions, how many rounds of revision. The article is there the whole time. So what does that look like in real life? This is an article that I took a screenshot of soon after it went up. Each article has a box next to the abstract that says open peer review, and in this case it says referee status awaiting peer review, because at this point there were no review reports yet. But you can see that it is the final publication. It just looks like this, and it has its final DOI already. A few weeks later I took a screenshot of this same article, and now it has changed. It's still the same page, same DOI, everything's the same except this box now has 2 positive reviews and names of reviewers underneath. The first one was a joint review with 2 names, and the second one is just 1 person. And if you were actually on the website, you could click those reports and it will take you to the bottom of the page, and you'll see the reports that look like the one I showed you earlier. Now, of course, most articles don't go through peer review immediately. They don't get approved on the first version. So what happens if the first version is not approved? Here's an article that went through several iterations. And again, this box, I actually have a bigger version of this one. Version 1 had a question mark, that means approved with reservations from the first reviewer, but rather than waiting for the second reviewer, the authors decided to immediately upload version 2, the revised version, a few weeks later. That one was a lot better. Version 2 actually passed peer review. 3 reviewers looked at it. When it passes peer review, at that point is when the article goes to PubMed Central first, and PubMed, Scopus, all the external databases. So before it passes review, it just exists on our site. And here the authors also decided to send in a 3rd version just to fix some of the remaining comments from reviewers. With the different versions, we had to think very long and hard how that worked with citing articles. So each citation should include the version of the article and the referee status of the article. A particular citation will point to a particular DOI, and DOI for different versions has a different appendix. In this case, it's .v2 for version 2. And we're working with Crossmark to link these different versions so that it remains one article and it's in the system as one article. If you find it in PubMed, you will find the abstract for the latest version that passed review, and then underneath there will be a link to other versions, and you can find the previous versions there as well. Now, if you do cite an earlier version of an article, or you find a link to an earlier version, follow that link, you'll get a little pop-up that says there's a newer version available, and then we leave it up to the reader to decide whether they want to see the new version or whether they want to see the version that was actually linked or cited. The ones I showed you all had that were revised had an orange revised button, which is when authors make changes after reviewers make suggestions. But it's also possible to update an article when there's just been a minor update, and that happens, for example, with software articles, where an article that describes a piece of software usually describes the first iteration of that software, and when the software itself gets updated, you're not going to publish a whole new article just to say this is what's happening in the new version, unless it's massive. So we allow authors to update their article with just an update of what's in the new software version. And here I happened to catch both of these right next to each other on our articles page. So there's a blue update for the software article and an orange revised for the article below it. Our article page looks like this with two tabs. One is indexed for articles that have passed peer review, and one is all articles, which is what it says it is. It's and I think that was my last slide. Yeah. So that was just a very fast, quick introduction. We do a lot more. So.